great to see you.
I know, it's been like since school.
But as briefly as you can, and I know that your story is not simple to explain, but if you could explain, how did your family get to Harrisonburg? What brought you there, and what brought you to EMS?
Yeah, well, tragically as it is, it was because my father was murdered. My family, we were living in Maryland at the time, and one evening my mom came home and my father was shot to death working at a gas station there. And so through the course of the trial, immigration lawyers, because at that time we were here on my father's student visa, and then we were in jeopardy of being deported at the time. So the lawyers that helped out with both the trial and our immigration case, they became very close with my family, and they had a connection.
I'm just going to quick interject. Where exactly were you from?
Oh, Nigeria.
Nigeria.
So Nigeria, my family immigrated from Nigeria. I was about 4.5 years old at the time when we came here. Well, actually, we came to London and then to New York, then Maryland.
Okay.
And so we were literally in the States about 2 to 3 years before my father was killed. And and he was accepted to New York University there. And and so we were in jeopardy. And so those lawyers helped us out. And they had an affiliation with EMHS, or knew one of the families that went to EMHS at the time. And so they literally recommended us moving to Harrisonburg. We had no idea, had never heard of Harrisonburg. We didn't even know what a Mennonite was. Never heard of that in my life, right? And and so they said, listen, this is a safe town. You guys go there, make a fresh start. And they actually paid half of our tuition for my sister, my older brother, and myself. And it got me into sports. And just a quick backstory, I remember my sister and I hearing on the intercom that the junior high basketball team needed players. We'd never played sports, or organized sports, I should say. So we decided to try out. We made the team, played basketball there, played volleyball there, and I ended up getting a full volleyball scholarship to George Mason University. And that was even a big deal at the time, because if I recall correctly, I was the first female athlete to get a full scholarship, or to even get a scholarship out of EMHS. So there was a lot of unknowns of, okay, what do we do now? What do you have to do? What's your grades? What do your grades have to be? And so got a scholarship there, majored in in communications, and minored in broadcasting, and graduated in 4 years. And after that, I signed a contract to play professional volleyball in the Netherlands. So I went overseas for a year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you had sort of a tragic story happen around that time as well, didn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the day that I landed in the Netherlands, I would say probably 5 hours later, the phone rings. And the team manager says, Joy, it's for you. And I'm thinking, who's calling? At this point, there's no cell phones, My family knew I was going there. My mother dropped me off, but no one knew where to reach me, because I didn't even know where I would be. So I picked up the phone, and on the other end was a strange male voice who told me that my older brother was murdered. He was murdered in a home robbery, shot to death. And if you can picture any movie that you've ever watched when someone's received a phone call that a loved one has been tragically killed, the screaming, the dropping of the phone, I felt like I was in a movie at the time. And here I am, literally in a room of strangers. I'm 18 years old. I'm across the ocean from my family, and I was just gutted and devastated by all of that. And then come to find out, the voice on the other line was Les Helmuth.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And I didn't know that at the time, but what happened was the police had not notified my mother of my brother's murder, but word got back to Les. So he called my mom to offer his condolences. And that's how she found out her son was killed. And from that moment on, Les was our guidance counselor from EMHS, but he became family instantly. Until this day, him and I just had a FaceTime call last week, actually. But till this day, he's like a father figure to me. He's been so important in my life, and just someone who was there, and he never left our side from that point on. And so my coaches, they flew me back home for the funeral. Funny enough, well, not funny, but it was the day I flew back to America was the day Princess Diana died. So I always remember that, because I
Wow.
was getting ready, packing up my stuff, and I'm watching the news at the same time, and it's like, oh my God, Princess Diana. And so I flew back home, stayed for 3 weeks, and my coach offered me out of my contract. He was like, listen, if you don't have the capacity to come back, it's fine. And I didn't cancel my contract because the last moments I had with my brother, I went to visit him the day I was leaving to catch the flight out of Dulles Airport. And we had such a beautiful moment because I went to borrow money from him. I was like, my family, my mom couldn't afford to give me any money. I'm flying across the country. I had $0. I was like, brother, I need like anything. So he gave me $50, which is so crazy right now. So we hugged and we talked, and he was so proud of me and so happy. And so my brother knew I was going to pursue my dreams. And so I decided I'm going to stay and play that year for him. Um, it was the toughest thing I've ever done. But in the same breath, when I look back to those years, I remember we had friends come to visit us while we were there. And this past May, after the whole George Floyd murder and all of those things, which are very triggering for me, I remember I wrote about my father's death, no, my brother's death, and on Facebook. And one of the girls that came to visit us in Holland, she said on the post, she said, wow, I had no idea that time I was there, you had just lost your brother. So I can't even fathom how at 18 years old, I was able to compartmentalize that, and and for someone to not know that I went through one of the biggest tragedies of my life. It's amazing what our minds can do. Um, but yeah, so many things happen over the course of the years that are triggering and that remind me of either my bravery or the sadness that was in my heart for so long.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I know, I
And
know.
jumping ahead, jumping ahead, what are you doing now?
Yeah. So after many, many years of like going through the corporate world, corporate America, I started in IT sales when I came back from the Netherlands, worked for the government. My last job was working for the federal government, where I worked for 11 years as a procurement officer. Can you imagine that? So, but in between all of that, I had started modeling, and I had started doing wardrobe styling. So I'd always been pursuing my dreams of being a model and being in the fashion industry all those years. And so 3 years ago, I launched my modeling agency called Kingsley Model and Talent Management. And I've been doing that successfully. And 2 years ago is when I finally walked away from the federal government and resigned so that I can pursue my dreams full time. And so those years were always hard because it was always, 8 to 9 hours on the day job. Then I would come home and put in the hours with my passion and my goals and my dreams. And so it was hard. It was a lot of perseverance. And so now I feel so good that I'm fully living in my dreams and what I want to do. So when I wake up, my schedule is my own. It's, and sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, what's on the schedule today? But then the emails and the workload dictates the day. And it's
Yeah.
always so many things to do.
Yeah.
I wear
And
every
then
hat.
in addition to the modeling agency, you also style some fans and the
Yeah.
Wizards, right? Do you have that right? That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. So I started, and so the wardrobe styling started about 11 years ago. And I
Okay.
was doing that, and that was literally my first business that I was able to
Okay.
still do while I was working. So through that, one of my bigger clients are Sons of Serendip. They started on America's Got Talent, but they performed at the Emmys and they've been doing really well. So I've been to the Emmys with them, been to America's Got Talent for Christmas specials that they've been invited back to. I have styled the Wizards, the Mystics, and particularly I've styled John Wall. Styled and helped creative direct his photo shoot. Soledad O'Brien, and some bigger names that I don't think some of the young kids at EMHS will know about, like Ricky Smiley. He is a national radio host, syndicated show. And then Albie Shore, who is a musician that I grew up with, so I had a biggest crush on him. So it was like full circle, like, oh my God, I get to style him.
Thinking back on your time at EMS, can you think of times when, specifically while you were at school, you felt like the community there helped you feel like you belonged? Or were there times when you experienced not feeling like you belonged?
Yeah.
And what did those look like? What do you remember?
Definitely both. I always say that my life is a collection of helping hands. When we moved to EMHS, to Harrisonburg, sometimes, yes, we felt like it was handouts, because we were poor, and there's no way around that. There were many days, months we couldn't afford rent, couldn't afford food on the table. The church gave us food. Our grocery shopping was at the church food bank. I remember going to the grocery store with food stamps and being embarrassed if I would see a classmate or see friends, and I would literally get out of the line and act like I forgot something so I can go and wait for them to leave and then go in the line, because back then you ripped the coupons out. Now they have a debit card, so it's a little bit more, it's less embarrassing. So, people gave us cars when we didn't have cars. And going back to my volleyball coach, she bought my volleyball shoes because we couldn't afford to buy volleyball shoes and knee pads. So if I didn't have those helping hands along the way, I would not be where I am. So I'll definitely say in that regards, the community did make us feel like we belonged. The times though, where I didn't feel like I belonged, and I look at that, that throughout the course of my life up until now, it always goes back to race relations. Being at EMHS, we were one of, I don't know, at the time I was there, maybe 12, 15 Black students in the entire school.
I'd be surprised if it was that many.
Exactly, yeah. Right. And so when you go back to my story, me being from Nigeria, us moving to New York, predominantly diverse in Black areas, to Maryland, same environment, and then boom, we're dropped into Harrisonburg, which is all white and full of people that didn't understand and didn't have the empathy and the I don't want to say wisdom, because we're young too, so we don't really know everything at that time, but people that didn't really understand what it was like to be Black, to be a minority, and to be one of so many few people in there. So I remember clinging to my Black community there. I remember we started the Black Student Association while we were at EMHS because we needed a space that was ours. We needed a space where we can talk amongst ourselves about what we were experiencing, because there are unknown biases that we experienced,
Mm-hmm.
I don't always want to say it was racism, but it was certainly ignorance and it was biases. There were times when there were things that happened at school. If someone did something bad, we, the Black students, were looked at first as the culprits, And meanwhile, I would get so mad because our friends would be out partying, our white friends, and drinking and doing all the stuff on the weekends. And I'm like, well, why are we the ones always targeted? So there was a lot of times where I did feel targeted just simply because we were Black, and it's those unconscious biases that people have.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that saved my siblings and I was sports, because we were a space that we were the best athletes at the school. And so it did help with popularity. It did help with us being able to probably break some barriers there.
Yeah.
But, those times were really hard because I did feel alone. And I find that thread now because, I always say with where society is right now, the biggest thing that I think has opened people's eyes started in May with George Floyd's murder. It's not something that we've experienced it as Black people from the beginning of time. So that wasn't my first awakening of how our Black men are being murdered, or how Black women are being treated, or how I had to work harder. I remember being at EMHS And getting there, we didn't have the same education levels that my white students,
Your
teammates,
peers. Yeah.
classmates, thank you, peers had. And so I had to work harder to get better grades so I can compete, because that was the only thing that I knew was going to save me was my education, and that was going to give me respect amongst my peers. And so from a young age, my family always told us, you have to work harder to be successful. You have to work harder to be noticed by your peers. And so coming forward to George Floyd, I found that in the pain that I was dealing with, again, the triggering of losing my dad and my brother, and the pain of losing another Black man to murder, it's, I found more comfort around amongst my Black community, because it's a space where I can go, and sometimes I don't have to say anything. They know exactly what I'm feeling. It's a space where I can go and I can be as real as possible. And I know there's no judgment there. I had a Zoom call with three of my white girlfriends after the George Floyd murder, because they had questions and they wanted to know. One thing I will say that EMHS gave me is that diversity. So I'm the Black girl that can be around everybody, you know, and I have a lot of non-Black friends that look up to me or look to me for that kind of advice and guidance. And so we got on this Zoom call after I told them to watch the documentary, The 13th. And if you guys haven't incorporated that into your curriculum, I highly recommend that documentary by Ava DuVernay. It really breaks down the construct of slavery to the prison system, to racism, to what has happened in America in a very easy to digest manner. So they watched the documentary, we spoke about it. And I was struck by one of my peers who said, when I explained to her all the racism I've experienced in my life, and she said to me, wow, Joy, I didn't think someone like you experienced racism. And what she was saying in that underlying message was, but you speak well, you're intelligent, you're educated, you surely haven't experienced racism. You have a successful business, you surely haven't experienced racism. Well, I've probably experienced a lot more because I've been trying to break down doors that didn't let me in. I'm one of the few Black women that own a modeling agency in this country, few that are Black owned. And so that's a big deal. And I take that role very seriously. And the other message she was saying was, I thought racism was reserved for the less fortunate Black community, you know, ones living in the hood or in the projects who don't have the same opportunities. And that's the messaging that I think a lot of white people have, is they separate the two when they don't realize that everything this country was founded on racism. And everyone has unconscious biases that they're not even aware of.
Wow.
I think we all have to have empathy for each other. You don't have to walk my shoes to understand the pain I've gone through, you know? And when I tell you what I've experienced, when I tell you I've experienced racism, when I tell you I've experienced pain and tragedy, believe me, you know? It's almost like when women experience sexual abuse and the world doesn't believe them. You're stripping them of that emotion, of that feeling, of what they went through. And you're telling them that it doesn't matter, that you don't matter. And so I feel like when we learn to have empathy with people, the world will, I think, be a better place. And it's easier to help, because I can't tell you to care about someone else. You have to want to care about someone else. If you see someone hurting, your instinct should be to help. If you see someone crying, your instinct should be to wrap your arms around them. I don't have to know what it's like to, I don't have children, but I can imagine what it's like to be a parent and to wear your heart on your sleeve every time your child walks out of that door because you're worried about their safety. You know, when my friends look at me and see that I am distraught about the murder of another Black man, then you can say, wow, she did lose her father to gun violence. She did lose her brother to gun violence. I can see why this is reactive for her. And so truly having empathy, obviously getting to know people, you know, my husband is Muslim. He's from Pakistan. In a million years, you couldn't have told me that I would have married a Muslim man let alone a Pakistani, because I was like, yep, I'm going to marry a Nigerian man all day long. That's it. But I also learned the attacks that Muslims go through.
Mm.
So his fight is my fight. When people attack Islam, I'm offended by it because my husband is the beautiful soul he is because of his religion. Just like I'm the beautiful person that I am because I was raised in the Christian religion. And we don't have to be the same. We didn't see eye to eye in the beginning because I was kind of like, all right, what's up with this Muslim thing? Like, but he gave me the Quran so I can read and understand. I go to the mosque with him. I fast with him. I did not convert, but I did all these things so I can have a better understanding of him, of his religion. So now I have empathy for him. And sadly enough, when he would go to the mosque during Ramadan, the times I wouldn't go with him, I would be worried because I would be worried of some crazy person that may go and bomb these beautiful people that are just there to pray and to give back to their community. So it's really allowing yourself to get to know other people and have an empathy for what you don't know. Don't make people have to change to be like you. The beauty of the world is diversity. That was the goal that I set out when I started my modeling agency is I need this agency to be diverse because I knew what I went through as a Black model when I was starting up. I modeled for 20 years. Um, I knew that when I would go to fashion shows or photo shoots, the makeup artist or the hairstylist may not know what to do with this hair or may not have the right makeup to match my skin. So I make it a point now to always source out artists that are versed with doing African American hair or skin tones, and are just versatile in general. And so it is important for everyone to feel comfortable in their skin. It's okay and acceptable for them to just be them, to speak their language, to eat their food, to do whatever instead of hiding it, because that creates a shame as a young person that is hard to shake. And then when you grow up as an adult, you're kind of mad at yourself, and disappointed that you didn't know better. I don't speak my language fluently anymore because I wanted to be American and speak English all the time. And now I can't pass that language on to my children the way my mother and my father tried to do. So I think acceptance and allowing them to be themselves is such a key thing.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Joy. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This was
Yeah.
fun.